Hello, my name is Rowan James, 36 years old, living in Louisville, Kentucky, where oak-lined streets echo with the sound of truck horns reverberating through working-class neighborhoods in the early morning. My life is far from glamorous, not at all like what was once expected of me. I'm a single father raising two young daughters, Lily, 10, with eyes so bright they seem to swallow the whole world, and Sophie, 6, who clings to my hand as if I'm her entire sky. They are everything I have, and I would do anything, no matter how exhausting, to keep their smiles radiant. Our home sits in a corner of an old, weathered neighborhood where peeling walls and the occasional wail of a fire truck siren wake us in the middle of the night. It's small, just big enough for a double bed, an old sofa I picked up at a flea market, and a corner dining table where my girls and I often eat strawberry jam sandwiches. Sophie's favorite. I don't have much, but I have Lily and Sophie, and that's enough to get me out of bed each day, even when my body feels so tired I can barely lift my feet. I work 2 jobs to keep this life from crumbling. By day, I'm a warehouse worker at a food processing plant where the air is thick with the smell of flour and machine oil. I haul heavy crates, sweat soaking through my shirt, trying to finish before the clock strikes 4 in the afternoon. After that, I drive an old delivery truck, making runs across the city until late at night. The work isn't easy, but it pays enough to buy milk, cover the rent, and occasionally get Lily a new book or Sophie a cheap doll from a discount store. Some nights I can't bear to leave my girls home alone. Lily, though only 10, is starting to understand the world, but she's still afraid of the dark and the strange noises in the neighborhood. Sophie, on the other hand, simply refuses to let me go. She'll sob uncontrollably if I step out the door without her trailing behind. So I bring them along, letting them sit in the back of the truck, wrapped in blankets and clutching pillows, sometimes falling asleep as I drive through pitch-black streets. Lily often stays awake, telling me stories about school, her literature teacher, or the classmate who made her laugh all day. Sophie softly hums children's songs, ones I'm not even sure where she learned. Those moments, exhausting as they are, always warm my heart. I tell myself that as long as I have my girls, I can endure anything. But I'm not always as strong as I'd like to be. Some nights, after the girls are fast asleep, I sit on the sofa, staring at a pile of bills on the table, feeling like the weight of the world is crushing my shoulders. I'm not always the perfect father. Once I yelled at Lily just for spilling a glass of milk, a small mistake that pushed me over the edge because of the stress. I hugged her right after, apologized, and seeing her tear-filled eyes, I promised myself I'd never let exhaustion get the better of me again. Life is tough and challenging as it is, but there's one truth. My background is anything but ordinary. I am Rowan James, the eldest son of the prestigious James family in Kentucky. My parents own a sprawling racehorse farm on the outskirts of Lexington and a string of properties across the state. My father, William James, is a stern man, always dressed in crisp suits, his voice booming as if he were born to command. My mother, Margaret, is the epitome of elegance, with her silk dresses and sharp gaze that can make anyone feel small if she chooses. They live for reputation, for the legacy of the James family, a name tied to thoroughbred horses and lavish parties. I was once part of that world, raised with the expectation that I'd take over the farm, marry a woman from high society, and keep the family name shining brightly. But I shattered those expectations when I met Amanda 11 years ago. Amanda was a waitress. She worked at a small cafe near the farm, where I'd stop for a black coffee after writing sessions. She had nothing but a genuine smile and eyes as bright as autumn. Her family was poor. Her father a mechanic, her mother a school janitor. But to me, Amanda was everything. I loved the way she laughed, the way she shared little stories about the cafe's customers, and how she always found joy in the simplest things. My parents didn't accept her. They called her a poor girl, a gold digger trying to climb the social ladder through me. They said marrying Amanda would tarnish the family's reputation, that I was destroying my future. I tried to explain, begged them to see her through my eyes, but they wouldn't listen. In the end, I chose Amanda, despite everything. We married in a simple ceremony at City Hall with only a few close friends and her family. My parents didn't come, nor did my sister Charlotte. Charlotte, my sister 7 years younger, is my parents' darling. She's beautiful, intelligent, and always knows how to please people. Charlotte grew up in luxury with expensive dresses, European vacations, and a level of indulgence that sometimes made even me, her older brother, feel jealous. I don't blame Charlotte, but I can't deny there's always been a distance between us. When I married Amanda, Charlotte sided with our parents, looking at me with a mix of pity and disdain. She didn't say much, but I knew she thought I'd brought failure upon myself. My marriage to Amanda lasted 9 years, but it wasn't a fairy tale. We loved each other, but life was hard. Amanda wanted a more comfortable life, a bigger house, vacations we could never afford. I tried, working day and night to give her and the girls something better, but I couldn't meet her expectations. 2 years ago, Amanda left me. She stood at the door, suitcase packed, and told me in a cold voice that she'd been wrong to think I'd inherit the family fortune. "I thought you'd be my way out, Rowan," she said, her eyes devoid of warmth. "But you have nothing." She left with a wealthier man, leaving me with Lily and Sophie and a broken heart. In the days after she left, I fell apart and questioned everything. Did I do something wrong? Did I try hard enough to keep her? Was marrying her and leaving behind all the wealth, prestige, and power the right choice? But every time I look into Lily and Sophie's eyes, I know I can't let myself drown in sorrow. I have to stand tall for them. As for my parents and sister, they all but cut contact with me after I married Amanda 11 years ago. Occasionally, my mother sends a brief message asking about the girls, but I know it's out of obligation. They never invite me to major family events, never ask if I need help. I've made it on my own, and I'm proud of that. But I can't deny that at times I feel utterly exhausted and stuck. Then one afternoon, as I returned from the warehouse, weary and reeking of sweat, I saw a pristine white envelope slipped under the door. Inside was an invitation printed on thick, luxurious paper with shimmering gold filigree. It was for Charlotte's wedding to Henry Caldwell, the son of a family that owns Kentucky's largest hotel chain. The wedding would take place at a lavish hotel in Lexington, and I was invited, along with Lily and Sophie. I held the invitation, my fingers tracing the gilded letters, and felt a wave of emotion surge within me. I know I'm not truly welcome, but a part of me still hopes. Hopes that this could be a chance to mend things with my family, for Lily and Sophie to grow closer to their grandparents and Aunt Charlotte. But deep down, I know that's unlikely. I looked through the crack of the door where Lily and Sophie were playing with puzzles on the cramped bed, their laughter ringing out like a melody. I wondered if I should take them to a place where I knew we'd be looked down upon. I called Lily and Sophie over. "Girls," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, "Aunt Charlotte is getting married. Grandma and Grandpa invited us to the wedding. Do you want to go?" Sophie's eyes lit up as if I'd just promised a trip to an amusement park. "A wedding? Will there be cake, Daddy? Will there be dancing?" She bounced up and down, her messy blonde hair swinging. I couldn't help but laugh despite the heaviness in my chest. Sophie always found joy so easily, even in the smallest things. Lily, on the other hand, tilted her head, her big brown eyes studying me intently. At 10 years old, she sometimes seemed wiser than I was. "Do you want to go, Daddy?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp, as if she sensed something was off. I hesitated. I wanted to say no, to confess that I was afraid to step back into my parents' world, where I'd always been seen as an outsider. But I couldn't say that to Lily. She deserved to know more about her family, no matter how distant they were. "I think it'll be fun," I said, forcing a smile. "There'll be flowers, music, and definitely cake for Sophie." Lily nodded, but I knew she wasn't entirely convinced. She pulled Sophie close, whispered something, and then they both shouted in unison, "Let's go, Daddy!" Their laughter made me forget my worries, if only for a moment. I made up my mind. We would go, not to prove anything to my parents or Charlotte, but because I wanted Lily and Sophie to have a special day. a beautiful memory, even if only through their innocent eyes. Preparing for the wedding was a challenge. I didn't have much in savings. Most of what I earned went to rent, food, and the girls' necessities. But I couldn't let Lily and Sophie show up in worn-out clothes, especially knowing my family would scrutinize every detail. I wanted my girls to feel confident, even just a little, among those unfamiliar stares. I took them to a discount store on the outskirts of Louisville. Sophie practically leaped with excitement when she saw a pale pink dress with delicate lace trim. "Daddy, I want this one," she squealed, clutching the dress as if someone might snatch it away. Lily chose a simple navy blue dress, but when she tried it on, I hardly recognized her. She looked like a little princess with her long hair neatly tied back and her eyes shining brightly. I swallowed hard, trying to hold back the lump in my throat. "You both look beautiful," I said, and I meant it. As for me, I had the old suit I'd worn at my own wedding 11 years ago. It was a bit tight at the shoulders and frayed at the elbows, but it would do. As long as my girls were respected and cherished, that was enough for me. In the mornings leading up to the wedding, I'd stand in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie and studying my face, now weathered like a wilted lemon, etched with wrinkles from years of hardship. But I told myself I didn't need to look perfect. I just needed to be there for my girls and for the faint hope that my family might see me differently. The day of the wedding arrived, and the Lexington sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. I drove the girls in my old truck to the Grand Regency Hotel where the event was being held. From a distance, the hotel looked like a palace, with white marble columns and twinkling lights spilling from towering windows. I felt out of place the moment I stepped out of the truck, as a valet gave my worn suit a fleeting, disdainful glance. I held Lily and Sophie's hands and led them through the grand lobby where enormous bouquets of white roses were neatly arranged and servers in crisp black and white uniforms glided by like part of a choreographed dance. Inside the banquet hall, the atmosphere was steeped in opulence. The tables were draped in white silk, adorned with gleaming silver cutlery and expensive wine glasses. The guests, all from Kentucky's elite, chatted animatedly, their laughter echoing like an unending symphony. I recognized a few faces, old friends of my parents, business associates of the James family, but no one looked our way, or if they did, it was just a quick glance, as if we were part of the backdrop. We were ushered to a table in a far corner near the service area where waiters bustled in and out. I could sense the deliberate placement. My parents didn't want us near the center where the spotlight would shine on Charlotte and her groom, Henry Caldwell. I tried not to dwell on it, pulling out chairs for Lily and Sophie and whispering, "Eat whatever you like, okay? Today's a special day." Sophie looked around, her eyes wide, mesmerized by the sparkling chandeliers. "Daddy, this place is like a castle," she exclaimed, drawing a few glances from the nearby table. I smiled, but a heavy feeling was growing inside me. Lily, more perceptive, sat quietly, clutching the hem of her dress. I knew she sensed the distance even if she didn't say it. The reception began with soft music from a live orchestra. Charlotte entered, breathtaking in a floor-length white wedding gown adorned with glittering crystals. Henry, the groom, stood beside her, tall and composed in a flawless black tuxedo. They looked like a couple straight out of a magazine, and the room erupted in applause. I watched Charlotte, searching for a trace of the little sister I used to play with as a child, but all I saw was a stranger with a perfect smile and cold eyes. My parents sat at the head table right by the stage. My father, William, was as stern as ever, while my mother, Margaret, glowed in an emerald silk dress, nodding to guests like a queen. They didn't look my way, not once. I told myself I was used to it, but the truth was each averted glance felt like a knife. The waiters began serving fine wine and fragrant, exquisitely presented dishes. Charlotte and the groom slowly ascended the stage. The bride was radiant in her pristine white wedding gown, the chandelier light reflecting off the crystals sewn into it, making her look like a princess from a fairy tale. Applause erupted, and I saw my parents, William and Margaret, seated at the head table, holding their heads high as if this were the proudest moment of their lives. Charlotte took the microphone, her voice sweet and confident, but with a sharpness I knew all too well. She thanked the guests, thanked Henry, thanked our parents for giving her a perfect life. Then she paused, her smile widening, and a chill ran down my spine. She scanned the crowd, her gaze gliding over unfamiliar faces before settling on the corner of the room where my daughters and I sat. "Family is the most precious thing, isn't it, everyone?" Charlotte said, her voice ringing out, warm yet tinged with something artificial. "We all strive to protect our family's happiness and dignity no matter what happens. And I know somewhere in this room my brother, Rowan James, is here to witness this special day. Rowan, are you there?" My heart pounded. I didn't want to stand, didn't want to be the center of attention, but hundreds of eyes began turning toward our corner. Lily looked at me, her eyes filled with worry, while Sophie innocently asked, "Daddy, Aunt Charlotte's calling you." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and stood raising my hand awkwardly. "I'm here," I said, my voice hoarse, forcing a smile. A waiter quickly approached, handing me a microphone. I gripped it, the cold metal sending a chill through my fingers. I didn't know what Charlotte was up to, but a bad feeling was growing inside me. I glanced at Lily and Sophie, trying to reassure them with my eyes, though I was trembling inside. Charlotte smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, Rowan, it's so wonderful to see you here," she said, her tone sweet but laced with sarcasm. "You know, everyone, my brother is a special example of choosing his own path. He married a poor girl against our family's advice, thinking love would be enough to change his life. And now, he's a single father, raising 2 little girls alone, working day and night to scrape by. Truly admirable, isn't it? Still showing up today, even with nothing to his name." The banquet hall erupted in laughter, as if Charlotte had just told the funniest story of the evening. I felt the blood rush to my face, my ears ringing, the world around me seeming to shrink. Their laughter wasn't just aimed at me, it mocked the years I'd fought, the sleepless nights caring for Lily and Sophie, the times I'd swallowed my pride to give them a better life. I wanted to shout, to fight back, but I stood there, microphone in hand, unable to utter a word. My mother, Margaret, stood up, snatching a microphone from a nearby waiter. She looked at me, her gaze icy, as if I were a stain on the family's reputation. "Charlotte's right," she said, her voice loud and sharp. "If Rowan had listened to his parents, followed the path we laid out for him, he wouldn't be paying the price with a miserable life, raising 2 children alone in poverty. Truly, he brought this suffering upon himself." The laughter swelled again, louder this time, like a blade slicing into my heart. I looked at Lily and Sophie, and my heart shattered. Sophie, with her innocent eyes, clutched my hand and whispered, "Daddy, why are they laughing at you?" Lily bowed her head, her shoulders trembling, and I knew she was holding back tears. I couldn't take it anymore. I set the microphone on the table, took my girls' hands, and whispered, "Let's go, girls. We don't need to be here." But before I could pull their chairs out, Lily grabbed the microphone from the table. My little girl, small in her navy blue dress, stood tall, her small hands gripping the microphone tightly, her trembling but resolute voice echoing through the hall. "Uncle Henry, the baby in Aunt Charlotte's belly isn't yours. I heard her crying and telling Grandma and Grandpa that it's someone else's." Time seemed to stop. The banquet hall fell silent, save for the faint strains of a violin from the live orchestra. I stared at Lily, stunned, unable to believe what she'd just said. Sophie clung to my arm, whispering, "What's Lily saying, Daddy?" Henry, standing on the stage next to Charlotte, went pale, turning to his bride with a look of shock and pain. Charlotte, radiant just moments ago, now stammered, her face ashen. "Lily, what are you saying? Don't make things up," she shouted, but her voice trembled, lacking conviction. The guests began to murmur, whispers spreading like ripples on water. My father, William, shot to his feet, his face red with fury. "Lily, you're a naughty child. Who taught you to lie like that?" he bellowed, but his voice couldn't drown out the skeptical glances from the crowd. I looked at my mother. She stood frozen like a statue. Her face was pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead, smudging her makeup. Lily, though small, still gripped the microphone, her voice ringing out again, steadier this time. I'm not lying. That day at Grandma and Grandpa's house, I was playing in the hallway and heard Aunt Charlotte crying in her room. She told them the baby was someone else's, not Uncle Henry's. They told her she had to hide it, to marry him, to protect the family's reputation. My heart pounded as if it might burst. I remembered the family dinner a few weeks ago when I'd brought the girls to my parents' house. It was one of the rare times they'd invited us. The main topic that evening had been Charlotte's upcoming wedding to Henry. After dinner, I helped the maid clear the table while my parents and Charlotte went to a private room to talk. Lily must have been playing nearby and overheard their conversation. I was stunned, not only because I'd had no idea about this secret, but because my daughter had the courage to speak such a shocking truth in front of hundreds of people. Perhaps she wanted to protect me, to defend my dignity. After Lily finished speaking, Henry, the groom, made his first move. With the calm and refined demeanor of a well-educated heir, he slowly stepped down from the stage, walked toward our table, and knelt to meet Lily at eye level. "Are you sure, Lily?" he asked, his voice low but not angry, as if he were trying to stay composed amidst a storm. Lily nodded, her eyes welling up but resolute. "I don't want people to laugh at Daddy anymore. I wanted to tell the truth." "Thank you, Lily," Henry said, his voice steady but with a faint tremble, as if he were holding back a wave of emotions. "You're very brave." He stood up and turned to look at Charlotte, who had collapsed onto the floor of the stage, her pristine white wedding gown now crumpled around her like a symbol of her downfall. Charlotte sobbed, her hands covering her face, but I saw her shaking her head as if trying to deny everything. "Henry, you have to believe me," she cried, her voice breaking, but her words were drowned out by the growing murmurs of the crowd. Henry didn't respond. He just looked at her, his gaze cold, devoid of the warmth of a man about to become a husband. Then he turned to the event organizers, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Pause the reception. Cancel the remaining ceremonies. I need time to sort this out." The banquet hall exploded. The murmurs turned into louder voices, questions, criticisms, and even soft chuckles from those who couldn't believe what had just unfolded. The guests, Kentucky's elite in their expensive suits and evening gowns, lost their composure, turning to one another to gossip. A few stood as if to leave, but most remained glued to the scene on the stage, where Charlotte was unraveling and my parents were scrambling to salvage the situation. My father, William, stormed onto the stage, his face red, his hands trembling with rage. "This is an outrage," he shouted, pointing at Lily and me. "Rowan, you've let your daughter lie to ruin your sister's big day. What do you think you're doing?" My mother, Margaret, rushed to the stage, hurrying to Charlotte's side, wrapping her arms around her sobbing princess. Then she turned to me, her eyes sharp as knives. "Rowan, what have you done to this family? You and that girl have destroyed everything." I wanted to respond, to shout that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I'd only come here with a faint hope of reconciliation. But I said nothing. I just held Lily and Sophie's hands tightly, feeling the warmth of their small fingers. I looked into Lily's eyes and saw a fire I'd never seen before, a resilience I wished I'd had at her age. I didn't need to answer my parents or Charlotte. Lily had done that for me. As I prepared to lead my girls out, another voice rang out from the head table where the groom's family sat. It was Mr. Caldwell, Henry's father, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a voice that boomed like thunder. "William, Margaret," he said, standing, his cold gaze sweeping across the stage. "I think your family owes us an explanation. If what this little girl said is true, this isn't just an insult to Henry. It's an insult to our entire family." The murmurs in the banquet hall grew louder. A few relatives from my family, my parents' cousins, stood up trying to say something to defuse the situation. "It's probably just a misunderstanding," Aunt Kathy, my mother's sister, chimed in. "Lily's just a child. She must be confused." But their explanations were quickly drowned out by pointed questions from the groom's side. A woman, likely Henry's sister, stood and pointed at Charlotte. "She's pregnant with another man's child and still planned to marry my brother? Did you think our family was a joke?" The hall descended into chaos. Some guests shouted, demanding answers. Others whispered to each other, their eyes full of suspicion and curiosity. An older man, probably a friend of my father's, tried to stand and say something, but his voice was lost in the noise. Charlotte, no longer the radiant princess, sat crumpled on the stage, sobbing, trying to grab Henry as he walked past. "Henry, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I can explain. Don't go." But Henry didn't look back. He paused for a moment, giving Charlotte a look of profound disappointment, then quietly walked out of the banquet hall. The heavy doors closed behind him, leaving a suffocating silence, as if the entire world had just shattered. I stood there amidst the chaos, feeling like I didn't belong. But this time I didn't feel small or out of place. I looked down at Lily, still clutching the microphone, her face flushed but her eyes unwavering. Sophie, though not fully understanding what was happening, hugged me tightly and whispered, "Daddy, can we go home?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice hoarse. I took my girls' hands and led them away from the table, past the curious stares and whispers. As we stepped into the lobby, I caught sight of Henry standing outside, lost in thought, staring into the distance. Then he turned to us. His gaze wasn't the pity or contempt I was used to from my family, but a quiet respect. He gave a slight nod, as if to say he understood that he saw my worth, even if only through Lily's actions. As we walked to the parking lot, the chaos continued behind us. I heard my mother shouting, trying to defend Charlotte, and my father barking at someone. My family's relatives were attempting to explain things to the guests, but no one was really listening. The James family, with all their prestige and glamour, was crumbling under the scrutiny of hundreds of eyes. I drove back to Louisville in silence, with only the faint sound of an old country song playing on the radio. Lily and Sophie sat in the back, Sophie fast asleep with her head resting on her sister's shoulder. Lily stared out the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as if lost in deep thought. I wanted to say something, to thank her, to ask if she was okay, but I didn't know where to begin. "Lily," I finally said, my voice soft, "you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to stand up for me." Lily turned to me, her eyes shining under the streetlights. "I wanted to, Daddy," she said firmly. "I didn't want them to laugh at you anymore. I know how hard you work and you're the best dad. I just wanted them to see that." I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "You made me so proud," I said, and I meant it. "But you don't need to worry about me. I'm okay." Lily smiled, a small but meaningful smile. "I know. But I wanted you to know that I'm okay too. And I'll always protect you, just like you protect me and Sophie." I didn't say anything more. I just gripped the steering wheel, trying to hold back tears. I didn't leave the reception feeling triumphant, as if I'd defeated my family or proven something. Instead, I felt a newfound confidence, a certainty that I didn't need my parents' or Charlotte's approval to know my worth. Lily, with her courage, had shown me that. She didn't just protect me. She reminded me that I'd raised my girls right, that love and honesty were what truly mattered. When we got back to our small apartment in Louisville, I carried Sophie to bed and tucked her in. Lily sat on the sofa hugging a pillow, and I sat beside her. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" I asked. "What you overheard at Grandma and Grandpa's?" Lily nodded, her voice soft but clear. "That day when we visited their house, I was playing in the hallway. I heard Aunt Charlotte crying in her room. She told Grandma and Grandpa that she was pregnant, but it wasn't with Uncle Henry. She said it was with another man, someone she'd met before. They told her she had to hide it, that Uncle Henry couldn't know because if he did, the family would lose everything." I listened, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Anger that my parents chose reputation over truth, sadness for Charlotte, who, despite hurting me, was still my sister. But above all, I was proud of Lily for choosing to stand up for what was right, even at just 10 years old. "You did so well, Lily," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." In the days following the wedding, our small apartment in Louisville felt quieter than ever. The radio still played old country songs, Sophie's chatter about her dolls filled the air, and Lily's soft reading from her corner of the room remained familiar sounds. But something was different. It wasn't that the world outside had changed, it was a lightness I felt, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from my chest. Lily, with her courage, had not only defended me against my family's mockery, but also shown me that I didn't need anyone's validation to know who I was. I didn't hear directly from my parents or Charlotte, but whispers from old acquaintances found their way to me. Charlotte's wedding had been canceled. Henry, true to his principled nature, demanded a DNA test right after the reception. The results confirmed what Lily had said. The baby in Charlotte's womb wasn't his. He cut off all contact with her, and the Caldwell family, with their pride and prestige, publicly condemned the James family for trying to conceal the truth. The James name, once a symbol of glamour in Kentucky, became the subject of gossip, not for its wealth or power, but for its deceit. I didn't feel joy at their downfall. They were still my family, however distant, but I also didn't feel guilt. I'd spent too many years trying to reconcile, hoping one day my parents would see me differently. Now I realized I didn't need that anymore. I had Lily and Sophie, and that was all that mattered. One morning, about a week after the wedding, I was preparing breakfast, toast with strawberry jam for Sophie, black coffee for me, when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron, opened the door, and saw my mother, Margaret, standing there with Charlotte. My mother still carried her regal air, but her eyes were weary and the lines on her face seemed deeper. Charlotte, in stark contrast, looked like a shadow of herself. Her golden hair was disheveled and her eyes were swollen from crying. I stood still, unsure of what to say, gripping the doorknob to steady myself. "Rowan," my mother said, her voice sharp but trembling slightly. "What have you done to this family? You and that girl, Lily, have destroyed everything. Our reputation, Charlotte's future, all gone because of that child's mouth." Charlotte stepped forward, pointing at me, her voice breaking with anger and pain. "Who do you think you are, Rowan? You let her say those things in front of everyone. Do you know what I've lost? Henry won't even look at me. This is all your fault and hers." I felt the blood rush to my face, but this time I didn't stay silent. I looked straight into Charlotte's eyes, then at my mother, my voice calm but firm. "No, Charlotte, it's not me or Lily who destroyed anything. You chose to lie. You and Dad chose to hide the truth to protect the reputation you value above everything else. Lily only spoke the truth, and I'm proud of her for it." My mother's jaw dropped, as if she couldn't believe I dared to talk back. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she shouted. "You who abandoned this family to chase after a worthless girl, only to be left behind and live like this? You think you're noble." I took a deep breath, feeling the anger but also a newfound confidence. "Mom, I've lived for my daughters, for Lily and Sophie. I don't need you or anyone else to tell me who I am. I don't regret choosing Amanda, and I certainly don't regret raising my girls, to be honest. If you and Charlotte think reputation matters more than truth, that's your choice, not mine." Charlotte burst into tears, turning away, unable to respond. My mother stared at me, her eyes blazing with anger but also a hint of helplessness. She turned, pulling Charlotte with her, and left without another word. As the door closed, I felt like a chapter of my life closed with it. I didn't know if I'd see them again, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of that distance. I'd chosen my path, and I knew it was the right one. A few days later, as I drove Lily and Sophie to the grocery store, my phone buzzed incessantly. I'm not one to check social media often, but when I stopped at a red light, I saw dozens of notifications from strangers. An old high school friend sent me a link, and when I opened it, I could hardly believe my eyes. It was a video from Charlotte's wedding recorded by a guest. It captured the moment Lily grabbed the microphone, her trembling but resolute voice ringing out, exposing Charlotte's secret to the entire hall. Someone had posted it online, and it had gone viral across Kentucky with thousands of shares and comments. I read through the comments, my heart beating faster with each one. This father raised an incredible girl. Her courage is astonishing. Rowan James is a respectable dad. Despite his struggles, he raised honest and strong children. This girl is a gem. The James family should be ashamed for looking down on them. My throat tightened. I wasn't used to praise, especially not on social media where words are often fleeting. But these comments weren't just praise, they were validation, encouragement from strangers who knew nothing about me beyond that moment with Lily. I turned to look at her, sitting in the back, reading an old book I'd bought her from a discount bookstore. "Lily," I said, my voice hoarse, "people are talking about you online." Lily looked up, her big eyes wide with surprise. "Talking about what, Daddy?" I handed her the phone, and as she read the comments, her face flushed. "Daddy, they're calling you a great dad," she said, smiling. "I told you, you're the best dad ever." Sophie, overhearing us, chimed in. "I want to be on the internet too." I laughed, pulling her into a hug. "You don't need to, Sophie. You and your sister have already made me so proud." The video didn't just bring praise. In the weeks that followed, amazing things started happening. A local charity reached out, offering financial support to help us cover living expenses. A Louisville trucking company offered me a job with better pay and more flexible hours so I could spend more time with Lily and Sophie. Even a few kind strangers sent gifts to our home. Books for Lily, toys for Sophie, and handwritten cards filled with encouragement. One letter from an elderly woman in Lexington touched me the most. "Thank you for raising a girl like Lily. She reminds me that honesty still matters in this world." Our life became easier. I no longer had to juggle 2 jobs or stay up all night worrying about bills. We still lived simply. Our apartment still had cracked walls and worn furniture, but it no longer felt heavy. In the evenings, the girls and I would sit together on the sofa, eating cookies and watching cartoons. Sophie loved Frozen best, while Lily always picked Matilda, saying she wanted to be smart and strong like the main character. Those moments, simple as they were everything I'd ever dreamed of. My girls were growing up not just in their thoughts, but in the way they talked about bigger things. One evening, as we munched on cookies, Lily suddenly asked, "Daddy, why is honesty so important? Is telling the truth always good?" I thought for a moment, trying to find a simple yet meaningful explanation. "Honesty is like a lantern, Lily," I said. "It can be scary because it lights up things you don't want to see. But it also helps you find your way, helps you know where you're going. You did the right thing by telling the truth at the wedding. You didn't just protect me, you protected yourself because you chose to be honest." Lily nodded, her eyes shining. "I want to grow up strong like you, Daddy," she said. "You never give up no matter how hard things get. I want to be like that." I smiled, pulling her close. "You're already stronger than me, Lily." Sophie, though younger, started following her sister's lead. Once, when I saw her stand up and apologize to her teacher for spilling a friend's pencil case, I realized Lily's honesty and courage were rubbing off, even on her little sister. One weekend, I decided to keep a promise I'd put off for too long. I drove our old truck with Lily and Sophie in tow to Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay, the amusement park they'd dreamed of visiting since they were tiny. I'd saved a small amount from my new job, and I wanted them to have a truly special day. As we entered the park, Lily and Sophie's laughter rang out like music. Sophie squealed at the sight of the roller coaster, while Lily tugged my hand toward the water play area, where fountains sprayed under the sunlight. I stood there, watching them play and laugh, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. The sun filtered through the trees, catching the joy on Lily and Sophie's faces, and I knew this was why I existed. I sat on a bench watching them dart through the water jets and thought about my journey. I used to think strength lay in wealth and reputation, in the things my parents always valued. But now I realized true strength was in the love and honesty I gave my girls. Lily, with her courage, hadn't just saved my dignity. She'd changed how I saw myself. I was no longer Rowan James, the failure in my family's eyes. I was Rowan, Lily and Sophie's father, a man who didn't need anyone else to define him. As the sun began to set, I called the girls over, handing each a cone of ice cream. We sat on the grass, watching the park's lights start to glow. Sophie leaned her head on my shoulder, and Lily sat cross-legged, smiling. Daddy, today was the best day ever, Sophie said, her voice sleepy. Lily nodded, looking at me with shining eyes. Daddy, we'll have more days like this, right? Absolutely, I said, pulling them both into a hug. So many more. Our pink chapter has only just begun, my darling.